What a stressful day. I need a game to ease some stress. Yes, see. Yakuza 0, huh? I decide to play this for a few hours. Yeah, that's what I needed. I first heard about the Yakuza franchise around 2007 or 2008 when Yakuza 3 came out. I remember seeing a review on it on TV from one of those gaming channels. I don't know much about it and I cannot remember what the show was called, but the reviewer had a lot of negative emotions and called it a Grand Theft Auto clone. I'm not a GTA person, so when I heard that, I lost interest. However, the old me was gullible, believing what other people said. I know that fans of the franchise hate it when you compare it to Grand Theft Auto, especially when it plays nothing like it, and sometimes comparing two games, especially ones with little to no similarities, can damage a game's reputation. I saw Kiryu and Majima in Project Cross Zone 2, but after that I didn't really think much of the series until around late 2016 when I heard buzz of Yakuza 0. I was reintroduced to the Yakuza series from such YouTube channels, such as TheGamingBrit, Hyperbit Hero, and my good buddy of mine Finnish, who are fans of the series, and from the love they shared for the series as well as the hype of Yakuza 0, I became interested in trying the game out. I got Yakuza 0 one Christmas, I believe Christmas of 2018, and I played a good chunk of it, doing a lot of the side quests and up to chapter 8. However, for some reason, probably being distracted with other games, I never got around to finishing it. I went back to it last year and started the entire game again, and this time beating the campaign. I have a lot of things to say, so let's get started. But first, I want to talk about where the series started and a bit of Zero's development. The Yakuza series were developed by Ryoga Studio, a division at Sega who were former amusement business staffs known for titles like Super Monkey Ball and F-Zero GX, as well as Mario Bit staffs known for the Jet Set Radio titles and Panzer Dragoon Auto. Although the name didn't become official until the Japanese release of Binary Domain in 2012. The main guy that led to the creation was Toshihiro Nadadushi, who worked on plenty of arcade games like Super Monkey Ball, as well as being one of the producers for Shenmue, which many claim to be a predecessor as both series have similar gameplay features, though the Yakuza franchise took many pieces of inspiration from Ryuga Goto's previous works, such as Jet Set Radio's map design, as well as Spike Out's broiled combat. The latter in particular was directed by Nagoshi. Nagoshi wanted a game that focused on a particular audience, specifically adult Japanese men, and not worry about appealing for everyone. He wanted to make a gritty crime drama that focused on the Japanese underworld and nightlife, which is certainly a different direction compared to his previous works on the Super Monkey Ball series that were more kid-friendly with its colourful and whimsical atmosphere. Now, you may be thinking that the Yakuza had a pretty smooth history, considering it's one of Sega's most popular series with 7 mainline titles, soon to be 8, as well as remakes and spin-offs. However, Nagoshi and his team had to fight a treacherous battle at Sega just to get a greenlit, as it was rejected twice, with one of the main reasons that it wouldn't sell in the West. Nagoshi even got scolded for pitching it a second time. However, lucky for him, Sega was changing it internally around the late PlayStation 2 era, as they were being merged with Sammy, and the shift in management resulted in the first Project Greenlight. And long story short, the first game was a success, beating expectations. The franchise was growing strong in Japan with numerous titles. Unfortunately, the West had many bumps to what it became today. The first 2 games were perceived pretty well in the West, However, over time, it got a lot of attention, with the 5th game only receiving a digital-only release 3 years after the initial Japanese release. Maybe I was in the wrong crowd, but I barely heard anyone talk about those games back then, besides the discussion of the first game's voice acting.
This is the Kazuma-san I expected. I guess there's no other choice. Go! Kill this arrogant motherfucker!
That is, until Yakuza 0 came out in the West in 2017, 2 years after its Japanese release. The game was first announced at a Yakuza-centered event on the 24th of August 2014 with a reveal trailer and was scheduled to release in Asian territories in 2015. On the 5th of December 2015, at the PlayStation Experience, Zero was announced to be releasing in the US and Europe, and that the game was coming out in January 2017 for the PlayStation 4. The localization of the game was handled by Atlas USA, with the main guy leading the localization being Scott Strichhart, who also translated titles for Vanilla Persona 4, 3D Dot Game Heroes, and Radiant Historia. Before then, the series translation was handled by Inbound. Atlas became a part of Sega back in 2013. The localization took a year and a half to complete, as they had to translate 1.8 million characters, which is nearly twice as much as your standard RPG, while also getting a turn of the original Japanese version. In addition, they also had to provide an in-depth guide for some of the minigames that are more popular in Asia, like Mazan and Sodi. According to Scott, they rewrote the entire Mazan tutorial, being 34 pages of explaining the rules of Mazan, and even saying that there was only so much they could explain on how to play Mazan without using up a guide. That sounds like a tough job to do. Imagine one of your job requirements is trying to understand Sodi or Mazan and then explain it to a large audience without them just leaving the room. I wouldn't want to be that person. What sparked many people's interest in Zero is that it was a prequel to the entire franchise, so it would be a lot easier to get into. I remember seeing a lot of buzz online on social media, as well as YouTube. 2017 was flooded with high-quality games such as Super Mario Odyssey, Sonic Mania, Nier Automata, Persona 5, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Breath of the Wild. So seeing a series that didn't get much attention for years and suddenly became one of the most talked games of 2017, alongside many big hitters, was nothing to scoff at. Ever since Zero, the series has been hitting with more titles with the Kiwami games, Like a Dragon, and Instant, as well as plenty of people trying out the rest of the series thanks to the collections, which are easily accessible being on most consoles. Out of all the Yakuza games, why am I starting with Zero first instead of the first game on the PlayStation 2 or Kiwami? Well, it's because it's the first game in the timeline, but the real reason is this is the only Yakuza game I currently own at the moment, so let me talk about my feelings towards the game by first starting off with the general premise. Zero is the first game chronologically set in December 1988, Japan during the Bubble Era. I don't know much about the Bubble Era, even with the attempted resets, but from what I understand, it was a short-lived period between 1986 to 1991, where the Japanese economy and businesses were booming, with plenty of people gaining a huge amount of wealth, causing more people to spend a lot, which is what is used as a source of inspiration for the plot. The story is told through two playable characters from different locations. The first character we are introduced to is the poster boy of the franchise, Kazuma Kiryu, who right now is a low-ranking Yakuza in the fictional city of Kamurochō, collecting debt from a guy in a lonely alleyway. After he collects the debt and a night of the town with his childhood friend Nishiyama, he discovers that the guy he beat up is found dead. He gets a page from the 3 lieutenants of the Dojima family, Daisuke Kuze, Hiroshi Awano, and Keiji Tsubusawa to come to the Dojima headquarters, requesting that Kiryu turn himself in so the police wouldn't get deeper into their operations. The only alleyway where the guy was murdered is toward the empty yacht, and it's a piece of land that many clans and other powerful people are trying to get their hands on, as it's worth a lot that would lead to more power. However, the owner of the land is missing, and only Sentaro Kazuma the captain of the Dojima family, and a few selected people know about this missing person. Tsubusawa mentions that the guy was killed with a bullet to the face, which meant that Kiryu didn't have done it, as he never carried a gun during his encounter with the victim. Kiryu realized he was framed by someone in the family, so that his adopted father, Shintaro Kazuma, who was currently in jail, would be punished by his actions as Kiryu is under Kazuma's care. To clear his name as well as protect Kazuma, he decides to quit the Yakuza, which, unfortunately for him, quitting the Yakuza means he has a target on his head, with Tuesday releasing his Yakis onto him. Lucky for Kiryu, he knows how to fight and defeats his Yakis and Tuesday, and eventually becomes a civilian by the head of the Dojima clan. No, Kazuma himself will still have to be punished. Kiryu encounters a man named Tatsubana who's in charge of a real estate agency that is on the same level in terms of power of the Dojima clan, who seems to be working with Kazuma and hires Kiryu in order to find the owner of the empty yacht before the clan members in exchange for finding out who framed him. The next character is Agoro Majima, who is another recurring character in the series who is a calm and disciplined person, which is very different from what I saw in Project Crosszone 2, as well from what I've heard about it from others. Agoro Majima is currently in the fictional city of Sotenbori and is currently the manager of a cabaret club known as The Grand. It may seem like a sweet life. However, for Majima, this is hell, as he's currently trapped in Sotenbori with plenty of Yakuza spying on him constantly, and he must pay off a huge sum of money in order to return to the clan he once belonged to. Many years before he worked at the club, he attempted with his sworn brother Taira Sajima to take down the Yuano Sawa clan. However, the plan failed and was tortured for a year by the Samana family, resulting in the loss of his left eye. We found out that he does a great job turning the Grand into a huge hit in the district, which means his boss Sadagawa and the rest of the Samana family are more inclined to keep him on running the business. One day, though, Sadagawa gives Majima a proposition. If he can find a person named Makoto Makamura and kill them, they will offer him back to the family. I found the story to be engaging, loving almost every moment of it, with many twists and turns, finding out each character's motivations and how the two main characters try and pursue the harsh environment around them. Since Kiryu is the main protagonist of the main series, that probably fleshes him out more. He doesn't get much development compared to the rest of the cast. Not to say Kiryu is unlikable, as he's loyal to his closest friends, as well as Kazuma, who he idealizes greatly, being one of the reasons he joined the Yakuza in the first place. Some of his biggest obstacles in the game is knowing when to let others help him during his troubles, but we do see this develop throughout the game, even if it's not much. We also see his laid-back, cheerful and goofy side in the side content like the sub-stories or when he's murdering on the dance floor. His exaggerated expressions during these minigames are so funny, like when he uses a remote car race, he just looks like someone broke his heart. Otherwise, Kiryu is here to strengthen the characters around him, particularly Tatsubana and Nishiki. A lot of characters are original here, but there are some characters who were from the first game, and from what I hear, Zero fleshes a few of them out, especially Nishiki. Nishiki and Kiryu grew up in the same orphanage and both got recruited around the same time. They are like brothers, and from what I've heard from a few people who played the original PlayStation 2 game, their brotherly love isn't so much. Here though, you can definitely see that, as we've seen them bonding multiple times, whether that be karaoke, drinking some starts, or in a car ride, reminiscing their childhoods. Nishiki even worries about his brother when Kiryu decides to leave the family in the first chapter. I'm going to mention some spoilers, so skip to this time if you wish to avoid them. There is this part in chapter 6 where the whole Dojima clan are out for Kiryu's blood, so he has to flee out of Kamurochō. He sees Nishiki, who offers him a lift out of town. The brothers bond for a bit until Nishiki stops in the middle of nowhere. He offers Kiryu a smoke, only to point a gun behind his head. This isn't for a false sense of security, so Nishiki could be rewarded, but out of mercy, believing if he kills him now, Kiryu wouldn't have a slow and painful death by the hands of the Dojima clan. I felt Nisachi's sadness as his voice actor does a wonderful performance in the scene. He doesn't want to go through this, but believes Kiryu would have a fate worse than death if he doesn't fire now. In the end, Nisachi doesn't kill his brother and Kiryu goes back home. While we know Kiryu would be okay, due to the names we used beforehand, this scene still hits hard with the feels, and the emotions don't end here, as there is plenty more throughout the game. Later on in the game, we also see the two brothers team up, showing that Nisachi cares more about Kiryu than the Yakuza, and seeing it through gameplay makes their relationship so strong. Tatsubana is one of the original characters, and when you first see him, he seems like a cold and stoic person that can control the entire district with his fingertips. When I played the game, I wasn't sure if he could be trusted, like a lot of the Sega characters, but there are times we see him help out Kiryu, like where he saves him by running over Tuesday. He has some traits from Kiryu in this game, like finding it difficult to open up to people, even as far as not letting his lack of arm strength bother him, but through Kiryu he learns to open up more. While Kiryu's side of the story is interesting, it doesn't compare to how well written Majima's side is. While Majima is also a recurring character, this was the first time he was playable. Well, you had Dead Souls, but that was a spin-off in a different timeline, and for that, I guess they had more time to flesh him out. From what I know prior, Majima is the goofy, wacky, and unpredictable dude. From a distance, he seems free-spirited. However, here, he is calm, yet trapped like a god on a leash. I'm going to mention some spoilers soon, but for those who wish to go in blind, the way to develop Majima is sublime, which made him my favourite character in the game. So, for those who played the game or aren't too fussed about spoilers, it turns out that Makoto Makimura isn't some hard-earned criminal or anyone that messed with the Yakuza, but an innocent blind woman with a tragic history, and we find out that Makimura is the new owner of the empty yacht, which was passed down by her grandfather, despite being unaware, as well as being Tatsubana's younger sister, hence the reason why everyone is after her. Majima doesn't know this as well until later on, which makes him question whether or not to murder her. God, every time Makimura is on screen, I just want to give her a hug because she goes through a lot of shit. Her and Tatsubana had a rough childhood in China for being part Japanese. Her mother died when they got to Japan. She was kidnapped by Oda, aka Tatsubana's right-hand man, to be sold as a slave, which caused her to go blind. Was hunted down by the Yakuza, watched her friend die, watched her brother die after being reunited for years, and dead sucked. If I had to think about who are some of the most tortured characters in any stories, Makimura would be up there. Majima originally was tasked to hunt her down, but when he discovers who he has to kill, he questions his efforts and his loyalty. While not explicit, we see Majima getting feelings for the girl, as we see a few lovely scenes that made me quite emotional. Both characters have a lot of similarities, being stuck in a cage, with Majima being used as a tool for Satogawa, and Makimura being hunted down and tortured. Both characters even use some of their eyesight, with Majima using an eye through torture, and Makimura going blind through trauma. Yakuza 0 to me is more so a Goro Majima story that covers his origins than a Kazuma Kiryu story. The game is divided between the two main characters. You start out with 2 chapters dedicated to Kiryu's story, and then the game switches over to Majima for 2 chapters, and then goes back and forth for every 2 chapters. This may sound like a problem, as you could have been invested in Majima's story with an important plot point going to be revealed only for going back to Kiryu's story for a few hours, but I didn't mind it for the most part, as for one, they don't interact with each other during the main plot. Their stories do intertwine with each other revolving around the empty yacht and finding an owner of the land. You would get pieces of information in Kiryu's story that gives added context to Majima's story, and vice versa. It's like watching a young-running TV show where you find out why X character hates Y character. You could have a day of playing Kiryu's 2 chapters, theorizing, ooh, I wonder what happened to him after he left the Dojima family. It's not waiting for a new episode to air or waiting for the latest comic book issue. The game is also kind enough to give you recaps to previous chapters too, so you wouldn't feel lost. You can get distracted with the plenty of side quests in between, which is a tone whiplash as the majority of the side stories are more light-hearted compared to the series' main plot. One moment you could be like, oh no, I wonder what happened to the dude who got beat up to save so-and-so. And then you'd be like, whoa, Kiryu is going to be in a thriller music video, isn't that so wacky? The turn between the main story and the side quests are totally different. But while it may seem bad for other stories, it kinda works here, as for one, there are subquests, meaning that most of them are optional, so you could ignore a lot of them. But the second thing is, it shows our heroes more laid back side, as we get to see what they get up to when they aren't in danger, so when something bad happens in the main plot, you care more about what happens to the heroes. You can get distracted easy with the side quests, which I did in my very first playthrough, and sometimes these stories can get in the way if you want to get to the main plot, as a lot of the times they could just sew up when wandering through the district. And there are a total of 100 side stories that range in different qualities, with some of them being mediocre at worst to amazing, such as Majima infiltrating a cult to rescue a mother's daughter, or when Kiryu tries to teach a dominatrix on how to be a dominatrix. Some of these would lead to a fight, but a lot of them are just the characters interacting with each other, answering multiple questions that can lead to different outcomes, like the one where Majima helps a guy to propose to his girlfriend through a crossword puzzle. Some of these sub-stories can lead into further sub-stories, with some characters appearing again, like the director who mistaken Kiryu as a producer, only to collaborate with him during the Miracle Johnson music video. You can even recruit some of the characters you encounter in Kiryu's stories to the real estate subplot, which is one of the two big subquests in the game. Throughout Kiryu's adventure, he would come across running a real estate business and face off against the 5 billionaires of Kamurochō. This is a meaty side plot that can expand the entire campaign and is meant to be played sparingly in between chapters. Here you can buy and invest in properties, hire managers to run the properties, and security guards to protect one of the 5 billionaires from taking it over. Once you reach a certain threshold, you would encounter one of the billionaires in a challenge of their choosing, like karaoke, and if you reach up to 90% in the area, you would fight that billionaire. Beat him and you will earn all that area and move on to the next one. It may seem complex at first, but once you get your hands on it, it isn't too bad, but it does take a lot of time, especially if you decide to vegetate about it until the last parts of the game. Majima runs a cabaret club where he goes up against the 5 stars while managing the hostesses. The cabaret club is a lot more involved than the real estate, as you need to recruit girls around Sotenbori by giving them gifts, customizing and training them to please the customers. The Cabaret Club could be its own game with how incredibly in-depth it is, maybe something like for mobile devices. I honestly didn't spend much time with the Cabaret, as I know it would have taken most of my free time, and while I did a bit more with the real estate, I didn't finish it for this playthrough, mostly because I forgot to do it until around the end game. I will probably go back to them when I play through the game again in the distant future. You can easily get lost in Yakuza 0, not just through the side stories and managing the businesses, but through the many activities the game provides, such as karaoke, dancing mini-games, fishing, mahjong, sodi, darts, billiards, bowling, and many more. There are also arcade machines that run old Sega arcade titles like Outrun, Space Harrier, and Super Hang-On that were handled by M2, known for porting many old games like the Sega Ages series on Switch, as well as the Castlevania collections. These arcade titles can lead into new sub-stories too. A lot of these games range in various qualities. I have no interest in playing Mahjong, and the dancing minigame can be difficult to see with all the flashing lights. But I love karaoke, the arcade games, and billiards. I'm not surprised with how good these minigames are, especially since these are the same folks who made the Monkey Ball minigames. Kamurochō and Sotenbori are a lot smaller compared to many sandbox games, but for me, it's not the size that counts, it's how you use it, as both Kamurochō and Sotenbori feel authentic, with plenty of activities to do, while I tried to play a lot of other sandbox games and that felt empty. The people you meet through the side stories that appeared in make it feel like a community. The game has a talent mark to see what stuff you've done, and for people who worry about not beating everything before the finale, the game unlocks a free roaming mode that lets you do the rest of the side quests you missed out on. But I like how the game doesn't force you to do every single little thing, and lets you experience what you want to experience. I love coming back to games I've played before and discovering something new, and I like how Zero encourages that with its quantity of content. It doesn't feel I'm forced to do every single thing. I've mentioned the side content, but I've yet to mention the main combat. So, what do I think of it? It's fun! The core combat is a 3D brawler and fights are encountered through scripted events, or when you encounter FUDs on the overworld. You have your usual light, heavy and grab attacks, but you can also pick up and use items in a fight too. Each character has 4 fighting styles. Now the 4th ones are only accessible by completing the real estate and cabaret events, which I never did. Kiryu's brawl style is an all-rounder. His rush style is the weakest and makes him inaccessible to grab opponents or objects, but is good for quick jabs and dodging, making it useful to avoid incoming attacks. And his beast style gives him super armor, can immediately attack when picking up an object, hits at a truck that is amazing for crowd control, but he's incredibly slow in his stance. Majima plays differently to Kiryu, as well as FUD style is also a jack of all trades. Like Kiryu's warrior stance, Majima focuses more on acrobatics and playing dirty, rather than Kiryu's more straightforward fighting abilities. His breaker style is similar to Capybara, sweeping enemies off their feet, being unpredictable, and is good when crowded. Majima carries a permanent metal bat with a shudder style, which he can use as pseudo nunchucks that is great when he's surrounded, or whack them with a bit more distance. He can also block without using health in this style, though enemies can still stagger him if he blocks too much. The shudder was usually my go-to when it came to boss fights, especially when he mimics wielding nunchucks, but it isn't really useful in close spaces as his bat will bounce off walls, making him stagger, causing a free hit from enemies. These styles can be switched on the fly with the D-pad, so if say the rush style isn't working in a particular fight, you can switch to the beast style to see if that helps. The characters can also use various items in battle, whether it's on the battlefield or an item they picked up throughout the adventure. The battle system is pretty straightforward, but what makes it engaging is the heat gauge, which can go up to 3 levels of power. The heat gauge is a super meter in fighting games, as the more you hit, the higher the gauge goes. However, if you get hit or nothing happens, the meter will go down. Pressing the triangle or Y button when you have the heat gauge allows the characters to perform a special powerful attack, and putting them off is satisfying. There are a variety of heat actions you can perform, and they will depend on how many bars are filled up, the fighting stance you are currently using, the item you are wielding, and where you and your enemies are located. The strength of the heat actions will decrease if you constantly use it, which is nice as it keeps combat interesting. There are apparently over 100 heat actions in the game, which is a lot. The animators and motion capture actors had a lot of work to do doing all these attacks that only a small percent of people will see. I enjoyed experiencing the new heat action I performed, and it would be fun coming back for a new playthrough of the game and discovering more new heat actions. It's a good risk and reward system, making you think about when is a good time to use your powerful move during a battle. Both characters have a skill tree that can unlock new moves for each style, as well as increasing their maximum health. You spend money to unlock them, which is easy to get, as you gain access to money by beating up FUDs, doing the story content, and the real estate side quests. Some skills can only be unlocked by doing specific quests, such as the Baratus quest or the Dancing Trio quest, which makes exploring rewarding. The core combat is really enjoyable, with most enemies being fun to fight. My only major issue with the combat is when encountering enemies with guns. When you get stabbed by a knife, the player will tumble, making enemies being able to get free hits. Getting stabbed by a knife takes a lot of health, but it's not too bad as the enemy has to be close to you. However, Death and Sot is annoying as it takes a lot of health and they are far away, and if you are surrounded by other enemies, it can be annoying trying to catch up to them. It's a lot worse when they're off screen as you wouldn't be able to predict the incoming hits. The game can also be pretty easy on standard difficulty. While the bosses can be challenging, you can always stock up on health by buying drinks and socks prior and use them in the middle of battle, negating the challenge. You can carry a lot of them too, as the inventory system isn't really used for much. Health items do appear quite frequently during levels too on the default difficulty, so I didn't have much problem running out of them. The music elevates the combat with some absolute bangers. The music was composed by a bunch of people, but the two guys who did a lot of the battle music were Hidenori Soji and Zenta, who have been around with the franchise for a while, with Soji being here since the very first title. Soji has also contributed to amusement vision games like Super Monkey Ball 1 and 2, as well as F-Zero GX and AX, which now thinking about it does sound similar to the F-Zero games, both having those techno sounds. I love how the standard combat changes slightly depending on which stance you are currently using too, and with each starter getting their own battle theme, there are a lot of good ones to listen to. Zenta started with the second PSP Yakuza game and has been working on the series since, doing a lot of the battle and minigame themes. He specializes in electric guitars that goes well with the battle themes, with some of my favorites being Troubleshooting Star, which is used during the real estate battles. The karaoke songs are also a highlight for me, with my favorite being Judgment, composed by Soji. Zero has a lot of chill out songs too, featuring a lot of saxophones and female voices that goes perfectly with the Japanese nightlife, and also goes well if you want something relaxing to listen to. I've listened to a lot of the soundtrack recently on Spotify, especially when writing this script. Overall, Yakuza 0 is a fantastic game that you can sink in weeks in with how much content is in the game, as well as the satisfying combat and the gripping crime story that got me so emotional. I'm so excited to try out the rest of the games, and it's a shame I didn't get into the series back during the PlayStation 3 days. I can see why so many people love this game, and I'm expecting to experience Kiryu's journey in the future. I will probably go play the first game in the series at some point. Before the end of the video, I would like to ask, what is your favourite prequel to a series you loved? It doesn't have to be from a video game, it could also be from a book, TV show, or a film. For me, those have to be Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater and Devil May Cry 3. Devil May Cry 3 is how I got into the franchise back in 2005, and Snake Eater is a perfect game to jump into the Metal Gear saga, as you can go into it without knowing anything about the series while rewarding veterans. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know if you want to see more Yakuza on the channel. Have a marvelous day. 好きすぎてどれだけ